Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It is a bit of a setback, but it is only a delay.
Vaccine supply issues temporarily slow BC's immunization schedule for at-risk people. Also,
I witnessed it. It was like her being gone all over again.
a Vancouver mother looking for answers after a memorial for her murdered daughter is torn down. And
It started with trying to make my bosses laugh, my other friends at work and people that would come in.
Mouthy Marquis, the man behind the cheeky messages at an infamous Vancouver strip club.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. A setback tonight for BC's COVID-19 vaccination program. It's a supply issue, but health officials insist it's only temporary. More on that in a minute. First, the latest numbers for BC and some encouraging news tonight. For the first time in months, new COVID-19 cases have fallen below the number of people hospitalized in our province. More than 1,300 people did test positive over the weekend, but only 301 came in the last reporting period, Sunday to today. That's compared to just over 340 people currently hospitalized. 68 of those patients are in the ICU. 31 people have died since Friday. Our death toll now nearing 1,100. And active cases continue their downward trend, now over 4,300. More than 87,000 British Columbians have now received the COVID-19 vaccine. But as mentioned, there will be a delay in shipments of the Pfizer vaccine, which means BC is having to adjust its program. Our Susanna De Silva joins us now live with more. So, Susanna, how much of a setback is this going to be?
Well, there will be a delay, but we will eventually get the vaccines that we were promised. There will be a dip, especially in the next couple of weeks, but Dr. Bonnie Henry does say that we will get those vaccines made up for sometime later in March. Now, the overall BC is expected to get about 60,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine in the next month or so. That's about half of what it was supposed to get during that time, but Dr. Henry says again that these delays are short-term.
We are moving ahead with those priority populations, and when they might have received vaccine next week and the week after, it will be the last week of February, first week of March that we'll be planning for. So we are, we knew that these types of things could happen, so we're trying to have some flexibility in the provincial program to be able to focus on where we need vaccine to target the populations as soon as possible.
She says over the next couple of weeks, the focus will be on giving those second doses to people. It has been now 35 days since the first people in this province received their vaccine. That is the timeline that they are targeting for that second dose. So that is what they will be focused on in the next couple of weeks. There are no delays for the Moderna vaccine. That is still coming in as scheduled. And Dr. Henry says that they hope to have all residents of long-term care homes across the province vaccinated by sometime next week.
And as we saw, BC continues to see a slow but steady decline in those case numbers. What's Dr. Henry saying about the possibility of maybe easing restrictions?
She raised that slight glimmer of hope, but also said it is well down the road. There's a number of things that they are thinking about over the next little while. Things like the Super Bowl, Chinese New Year, Family Day. All of these things are being factored in as they take a look at those restrictions, which are set to expire in February. They are going to also keep an eye on spikes that we have seen in the interior as well as on the island. And they are going to be looking at whatever measures they say they think will make sense to keep us under control.
Hopefully, if we start to continue on this trajectory of decreasing community transmission and increased protection in our care homes, we might have some ability to loosen some of the restrictions. But so much depends on everything that we do now, today.
There, of course, are a couple of other things that they are monitoring that could change the course of the pandemic here. Those new variants being one of them. They are looking at and waiting for the results on 6 tests that may, in fact, be one of those new variants that have appeared. She did also speak about a slight surge in seeing of children who have been admitted to hospital with serious cases of COVID, some to the ICU. They have all now recovered, but she says they have been monitoring that it has been related to small groups getting together and household transmission, but that is something that they are watching.
Susanna De Silva with the update tonight. Thanks. A 3-day hospital visit to monitor new dementia medication turned into a deadly 3-week stay at Lionsgate Hospital after a COVID-19 outbreak was declared. As Tina Lovegreen reports, families whose loved ones got infected and died while there are wondering why more wasn't done.
A lot of memories for you in there?
Yeah, we repainted it for my niece, but it used to have writing on it, like no boys allowed, except my dad.
Some good craftsmanship to have survived 49 years of tea parties and windstorms.
He always put fresh flowers and hung them by the door.
Paula Neufeld's father, Rudolph, built it himself. The 81-year-old was skilled at keeping busy.
He has always been an avid cyclist, mountain biker, kayaker, cross-country skier.
And Rudy, as he liked to be called,
always being goofy.
Never took himself too seriously.
He would be anyone's #1 cheerleader. He just was always optimistic.
A few years ago, he developed Alzheimer's, and his new medication wasn't sitting too well with him. So he was taken to hospital for monitoring on November 18th. 2 days later, a COVID outbreak was declared at Lionsgate Hospital.
So the hospital's on lockdown, and nobody was allowed to be admitted, and no one was allowed to be discharged. So my dad was basically stuck in there.
A 3-day stay turned into 3 weeks, the family unable to see him much. As his health started deteriorating, he began showing a fever. A COVID test came back positive.
The people who were not positive, why would you keep them on the same ward as the people who were and say they had to stay there? Because to me, that increases the chances of them getting COVID.
Vancouver Coastal Health said it can't speak to this case specifically because of patient privacy, but said decisions around the movement of patients is made with the direction of the medical health officer, and the safety of patients is a priority. The outbreak at the hospital was declared over on December 24th, more than a month after it started. All in all, 59 people would get infected. 31 were patients and 12 of them died.
These numbers are people. And these people are loved by other people, and they're significant parts of other people's lives. And just because someone is higher in age doesn't mean their quality of life is worth anything less than anyone else. My father had a right to live his life. COVID cut that short. And we'll never know how much longer we had with him.
Rudy died 2 days before Christmas, leaving behind his wife of more than 50 years, his 2 daughters, and grandchildren. Tina Lovegreen, CBC News, North Vancouver.
A targeted shooting in Langley overnight has left a man in critical condition. RCMP say the 27-year-old victim called 911 for help. He was found with multiple gunshot wounds in the underground parking lot of this condo just after midnight. Police say the victim was uncooperative with investigators before he was taken into surgery.
Anytime we have a shooting, it's concerning. This one, more concerning because we're inside a residential building. It just goes to show that the people involved in this conflict don't care.
The RCMP's Serious Crime Unit has taken over the investigation. Police say the victim is expected to survive. A Vancouver mother is looking for answers after her daughter's memorial was torn down unexpectedly. She says she maintained it over the years as a way to commemorate her murdered daughter and to keep a light on her unsolved case. Our Isabel Rogem spoke to her about rebuilding years of work.
It looked like somebody just went to town and tore it all down. So someone took it upon themselves to remove her memorial and dump it right there like it was garbage. My daughter is not garbage.
Marlene Thistle's memorial to her daughter was once filled with vibrant flowers, statues of angels, and a cross. So she was shocked to find it barren for the first time in nearly 4 years.
When I witnessed it, it was like her being gone all over again. The moments of her being shot.
Thistle mounted the memorial at China Creek North Park in East Vancouver, just a few meters from where Janice Nicole Bryant was killed in a targeted shooting in 2017. The 33-year-old's killer has not yet been found. Thistle says the shrine was a way to have a public reminder of her daughter's unsolved case. The City of Vancouver and the Park Board tell CBC News its staff was not responsible for the removal. However, it confirms there have been several public requests for it to be taken down.
What if this memorial site was for your daughter, your sister, or your mother? really sit back and take a moment and think about the impact, how you would feel as an individual to find a memorial destroyed like it was. It took me 3 years to put together, so I'm thinking it took a long time for it to be taken apart.
While Thistle knows she may never find out who took it down, she's committed to building it back up.
Until her murder case is solved, I will set it up again.
Even if it gets torn down again. Isabel Regam, CBC News, Vancouver.
Drivers in Mission formed a convoy this weekend in support of a trans 14-year-old who was allegedly assaulted this week by two girls in a schoolyard. The victim in Monday's incident took in the support of hundreds of drivers from along the rally's route. The local MP, acting mayor, RCMP officers, and firefighters were all part of the procession that aimed to oppose bullying in all its forms. Supporters say it's important to show allyship to the LGBTQ2S+ community.
We couldn't just sit back and allow what happened to them to be, not addressed.
It's very important that we came together, supported the family, supported anyone that's been a victim of bullying. District of Mission has a zero tolerance of bullying.
Village to fight racism, discrimination, and bullying, and that's what we've seen today. The support has been overwhelming.
Charges are being recommended against two girls in the incident. It happened at École Heritage Park Middle School in Mission. Well, a cool-headed 17-year-old snowmobiler is being praised from search and rescue crews near 100 Mile House. The teen became separated from three family members, but he remained calm and dug a snow cave to stay warm and safe after getting lost. South Caribou Search and Rescue says his mature decisions helped in his rescue. He parked his snowmobile in an open and visible area, dug a shelter, and hunkered down to wait for rescuers. Joined now by meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. Our first check of the forecast. Well, that was quite a day, Joe. Beautiful.
Oh, well said. Yeah, just stunning. A nice start to the week under a very strong and gorgeous high pressure system. And we get to keep the sun for part of our Tuesday as well. Let's take a look at the current temperatures. That is going to be our story as we head into the long range forecast for right now at YVR. We will notice some dropping overnight lows over the next 5+ days. 0 right now at Squamish, hanging on to a 3 at Victoria Airport. These temperatures and this strong high pressure courtesy, well, I should say blue skies, courtesy of this strong high pressure, which is tracking eastward tomorrow, and that's allowing a Pacific system to roll in, but it really breaks up as it hits the south coast. Watch this as I take you through the late evening hours. We do have some fog showing up along the strait and the inlet through the early morning hours, but then after 6-7 a.m., things actually clearing out quite nicely. I think we're looking at a decently sunny start to your Tuesday. It's after 4 p.m. We'll see those increasing clouds tracking across the south coast, but showers really break up. Watch as I take you through this model run. After about 5 p.m., sort of breaking apart. So there is a slight chance between 5 and 7 p.m. tomorrow night. We'll see some showers, but generally a dry but cloudier next few days. I will talk about, yes, the rumors of snow are potentially true. That's coming up later on in the show. But Mike, now for something completely different, as they say. A Vancouver strip club is raising eyebrows with its tongue-in-cheek marquee. The historic Penthouse nightclub has been closed since the pandemic began.
But as Andrea Ross reports, one of its bartenders is keeping that sign current, hoping a little humor can carry the club through the toughest time in its 73-year history.
Quite cute. Yes, they make me chuckle.
I always read them, like every morning.
It's interesting. If you've been down Seymour Street in downtown Vancouver, the Penthouse marquee has likely caught your eye. The signs are sassy, raunchy, cheeky, a little crass, turning heads and stopping traffic.
It started with trying to make my bosses laugh.
It started in 2016 during the Pokemon Go craze. Benjamin Jackson put up this sign. It worked or backfired, depending who you ask.
We had people lined up, all ages, trying to get in the club. We had parents trying to pay for their kids just to go catch the Pokemon and come back.
He's been the sign guy ever since.
It was quite obvious that he knew what he was doing.
The Penthouse opened in 1947. It's known for exotic dancing, but it's also a supper club, theater, and live music venue. Names like Frank Sinatra and Sting have graced the marquee, and it's seen decades of debauchery, a major fire, police raids, and even a murder.
My father and Uncle Joe, when they were running the bar back in the 70s and the 60s, and back then, one thing that they had always taught me before I started was you have to be creative in order to survive in this business.
Not everyone has appreciated their humor.
One time we had a marquee that said, "We take off more than WestJet," and I had a call 2 days later from my general manager at the time and said, "We have a cease and desist letter from WestJet."
When former President Bill Clinton came to town several years back, the marquee referenced the scandal with Monica Lewinsky.
I got personally a phone call from the Secret Service, and they asked us to remove the sign.
The pandemic is the toughest obstacle yet. The Penthouse has been closed for months, undergoing renovations for whenever the doors can open again.
When Bonnie gives everyone the green light that you can go back to bars without having to wear your mask, without having to be 6 feet apart, I'm very confident that bars like the Penthouse it'll be a little weird at first, but once it gets going, it's going to kick right back off.
Ready for another 73 years of bad behavior. Andrea Ross, CBC News, Vancouver.
Yeah, it's all about staying creative, Joe. You gotta.
I was going to say some, roll with it. Some very cheeky signs.
Yes.
You gotta go with it.
I can't wait to see what he puts up when they finally get to reopen again after the pandemic.
Yeah, let your imaginations. I was going to say, let your imaginations roll with that one for a bit. But sticking with the theme, at a time when Vancouver venues in general are struggling, the historic Hollywood Theatre in Kitsilano is banking on more than just movies to survive.
Yeah, the theater on Broadway and Balaclava Street has reopened its Depression-era doors with pandemic-friendly changes. Our GP Mendoza got a look inside to see how the venue is adapting.
Well, the Hollywood Theatre started construction in about 1934, but it finished and opened to the public on October 10th, 1935, right in the middle of the Depression. It was always sort of a community hub where people came, obviously, to get away from the trials and tribulations of the world, or just to celebrate movies and good films. I just had memories of coming here with my grandmother. When I was a young kid, you go and you mow your grandma's lawn, and then she'd bring you for ice cream, and then you would come see a movie. And that happened quite often with our family. The chairs are the originals. The ones with the wood backs are from the 30s. We built them on these metal sleds and they unbolt from the floors, and then basically we can take them all away. Things like the front of the building color is called cottage cream. It's a color from the 30s. We had to keep that. We had to rebuild and retain the original look of the neon. The sconce lighting on the side walls, we had 2 of those left, I believe, and we had to recreate them all so they looked like they were, again, heritage again. We decided to open because it's a little bit of ray of good hope. We have to remain positive. We can't always err on the side of fear. People walk through that door and they gasp about how beautiful it is, but they're also feeling what's to come.
Good to see that. All right, a reminder, you can also watch our newscasts live on CBC Gem. CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Well, it appears Joe Biden will scrap the Keystone XL pipeline project on his first day as U.S. president. We'll have a reaction from Alberta just ahead. Well, thanks for staying with us tonight during our commercial-free live stream. Well, a new law on organ donation that came into effect in Nova Scotia today is a North American first. It's called presumed consent. And as Shayna Luck explains, it means people are presumed to be organ donors unless they opt out using a special registry.
Every year, thousands of people in Canada need an organ transplant, and some of them will die without ever receiving a donation.
He was anemic, so he had no energy. He needed painful injections weekly to keep his hemoglobin up. You're always wondering, like, what's going to happen next.
Joel McLean was born with a condition that leads to kidney failure. His mother gave him one of hers when he was just 2.
As a parent, you do anything to make their life better, easier.
But in 2019, they discovered he needed another. Last year, the call finally came.
It was like surreal.
Nova Scotia's new presumed consent law is expected to help many more people who are waiting for organs. Under the new rules that are now in effect, if you don't want to donate an organ, you have to put your name on a special provincial registry. Anyone under 19 is exempt, and so are people who don't have the capacity to consent.
After this bill becomes law, we will all be organ donors.
In April 2019, Nova Scotia's Liberal government introduced the change in the provincial legislature. The bill passed unanimously. But it took almost 2 years of work to prepare the opt-out registry and the public. Medical staff also had to be trained to approach grieving families in the right way. It's already working. A record number of people donated organs even before the law came into effect.
We're not just changing it, but we're changing it and already seeing dramatic results for the better. That's pretty gratifying.
In many cases, families will never know or meet their donors. That does not lessen their gratitude.
To be able to give someone a gift that they don't know, that is actually saving their lives, is incredible.
They are simply humbled that someone chose to make their lives so much better. Shayna Lux, CBC News, Halifax.
All right, back in just a few seconds with more on Joe Biden's plan to stop the Keystone XL pipeline. We'll have a reaction from Alberta and a look at how security is ramping up 2 days away from his inauguration in Washington, D.C. Right now, have a look at downtown Vancouver time. In Washington, D.C. tonight, with less than 48 hours from Joe Biden's inauguration, word the incoming U.S. president plans to kill the Keystone XL pipeline. That move has Alberta Premier Jason Kenney threatening legal action. But as Hannah Thibodeau reports, some see it as a welcome step away from fossil fuels.
This will be the first hurdle in the new Canada-U.S. relationship. An executive order to cancel the Keystone XL pipeline is expected to come on Joe Biden's first day in office as president.
We cannot imagine a circumstance where the United States would effectively choose to benefit OPEC dictatorships that have spread conflict and undermine global security, rather than partnering with its close democratic ally, Canada.
The pipeline was first announced in 2005 and would carry 830,000 barrels of crude a day from the Alberta oil sands to Nebraska. It would then connect to the original Keystone that runs to U.S. Gulf Coast refineries. Opposition leader Erin O'Toole released a statement saying, at a time when both countries need to focus on job creation and strengthen bilateral relations, I call on the Prime Minister to immediately reach out to the incoming U.S. administration to stop this from happening. But the NDP and Green leaders say, stop focusing on saving this controversial project and invest in renewable energy.
This is not a surprise given that global markets are making it clearer than ever that the jobs of the future are jobs that help us fight the climate crisis.
Rather than pushing them to reverse the commitment to end the Keystone pipeline, we should be using our diplomacy to work with them to create a North American carbon border.
Many believe there's very little the federal government can do to change the new U.S. administration's mind.
They see the fossil fuel energy in Alberta as being, quote unquote, dirty oil because it pollutes locally in their view. So this is one where, despite the Prime Minister's efforts to support and promote very important Alberta energy export, I'm afraid he's not going to be successful.
The Canadian government says it will continue to make the case for the pipeline, pitching that Canadian oil is produced at a higher environmental standard, but also promoting it as a strengthening in the Canada-U.S. energy relationship. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
And as Hannah mentioned, Biden's move is shining a light on Canada-U.S. relations. We asked our David Cochrane to pull back the curtain on the political forces at work and what hope there may still be to change course.
As the sun sets on the Trump presidency, the door is closing on Keystone XL.
I've been against Keystone from the beginning. It is tar sands that we don't need, that in fact is in a very, very high pollutant.
That was May, so it's no surprise Joe Biden is poised to revoke Keystone's permit when he takes office on Wednesday. After all, Biden was vice president when Barack Obama blocked Keystone in 2015. Trump revived it during his presidency, but then Trump lost, and Biden won with some big help from progressives who oppose Keystone.
This is low-hanging fruit for Biden. He's going to have certain things on labor and other issues that will be more difficult for his progressive caucus. This is one that for him is a slam dunk.
A slam dunk for the Biden administration, a headache for the Trudeau government.
We support the Keystone pipeline. We think it's good for Canada. We think it's good for the United States in terms of their energy security. And that's the message we'll carry to Washington.
The Conservatives want Trudeau to convince Biden to save the pipeline.
The most important thing you can do right now is get on the phone, if you can, get to meetings in the United States and meet with the officials and make sure they're well aware of how important this project is.
Others say, let it die.
You simply cannot continue to build pipelines, to continue to frack oil.
I think that our resources and effort and time and money should not be spent on doubling down on something that's not going to create good jobs for the future.
A report from the CBC's David Cochrane. Well, today is a federal holiday in the United States as people mark the birthday of civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. It's also designated as a national day of service to encourage people to volunteer. President-elect Joe Biden and his wife Jill were in Philadelphia this morning helping load boxes at a food bank. For his part, Donald Trump was at the White House and had no public events scheduled, although there are widespread reports he plans to pardon or commute the sentences of dozens of people in his final hours as president. And authorities in Washington, D.C. are taking no chances ahead of Biden's inauguration on Wednesday. Residents of the city are mostly inside as a massive security force looms on lockdown streets. Katie Simpson begins with some tense moments today in a city where nerves are running high.
Inauguration rehearsals were well underway on the front steps of the Capitol when suddenly organizers are told to get in the building as quickly as possible as an unknown threat looms nearby. Carrying their instruments, the rush in is urgent. A CBC News crew member had to drop everything to and make a run for it. But it turns out there was no security threat. A fire at a homeless encampment caused the scare. No one was hurt. It all serves as another reminder of the frayed nerves in Washington.
The intense security presence is meant in some ways to put people at ease. National Guard members are working to prevent a repeat of the Capitol riot. But the same soldiers who are here to provide protection are now being vetted to make sure that there's no threat of an insider attack.
In coordination with the Secret Service and the FBI, they're screening all the personnel that are coming in.
There's no evidence to suggest there are rogue soldiers in Washington, though it will take some time to vet all 25,000 troops who will be on duty.
I think they're going to be looking at Facebook accounts, Twitter. They're going to be relying on commanding officers knowing their soldiers to try and see if anybody who has leanings to cause them for concern.
The fear is not unfounded after nearly a dozen former military members and several off-duty police officers were arrested after the riot.
It's outrageous. You take the oath of office to preserve the law, and then on your time off, off-time duty, you come and be part of a riot. It has to stop.
If the incoming vice president is worried, she's not letting on.
I am very much looking forward to be sworn in as the next vice president of the United States, and I will walk there to that moment proudly with my head up and my shoulder back.
Kamala Harris may not hold her breath in that moment, but an anxious nation will. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
The Kremlin's most prominent critic will be in custody for 30 days until his trial. Alexei Navalny was arrested yesterday after returning to Russia for the first time since being poisoned last summer. Chris Brown has more on today's court ruling.
Without giving Alexei Navalny any notice, Russian authorities turned a police station into a makeshift courtroom. Then they invited only Kremlin-friendly media to attend. Kremlin-friendly media that seemed to actually know about this event even before Alexei Navalny and his lawyers did. And they proceeded to have a very fast hearing with very little time for Navalny to prepare about what his fate would be. Last night, as he arrived back in this country at Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport, Navalny turned and kissed his wife Yulia goodbye at passport control, where he was taken into custody by Russian authorities. They said he was being arrested for violating his parole. Now, those terms of parole would have been impossible for Navalny to actually have met because for the last 5 months he had been recuperating in Germany from that Novichok nerve agent attack. It's an attack that Navalny personally blames Vladimir Putin for. The decision today was that Navalny will remain in jail for the next 30 days until there's another hearing, and who knows how long this process could go on for. Vladimir Putin, on the other hand, clearly feels that he can act with impunity against Navalny, that Russians will acquiesce, and that he can deal with whatever fallout comes from the international community. Chris Brown, CBC News, Moscow.
Transport Canada has cleared the Boeing 737 MAX for flight nearly 2 years after being grounded worldwide. Coming up, we go behind the scenes and find out how Air Canada and WestJet plan to bring the plane back into passenger service.
Not everyone who plays the lottery game relies on pure luck. Some people become obsessed with finding a mathematical way to improve the odds. Other players just get a kick out of fantasizing about becoming overnight millionaires.
Joining us from Vancouver, Professor William Zimba, who has written articles on beating the system. Professor Zimba, what are the odds now against winning that 649 lottery, or are they the same every week?
Well, Mary Lou, in terms of winning, it's the same every week. And this week, it's 1 in 13,983,816. So basically, 1 in 14 million of winning first prize.
That's because of the way you choose the numbers in this lottery. There's only so many permutations and combinations.
Yeah, Mary Lou, you can think of it as a large checkboard, with a huge, huge checkboard, and there are a lot of squares. And you have to be on the right square, and there are basically 14 million of these squares.
Now, is there any way at all, is there any system, is there any way of influencing those odds, of bettering your odds? Well, is there such a thing as a lucky number?
No. There are no lucky numbers in terms of chance of them actually occurring. They each have all the same chance of occurring. However, there are some things you can do to better yourself. First of all, in this week's draw, usually when you have a draw, your dollar that you bet is worth about actually 40 cents. The rest is commissions. And this week it's actually up to 61 cents is what a random person would get with a random draw. Now you can try to get that 61 cents to be more valuable by picking unpopular numbers. Now with these unpopular numbers you can get a better edge. Let me give you an example.
Unpopular because people don't like them?
Because they don't choose them.
Huh.
Let me give you an example, Mary Lou. The worst number, the most popular number of all, is number 7. Other popular numbers are 13, 11, 22, 33, and 1. And an unpopular number is 41. In fact, it's according to our calculations, it's the 10th least popular number. And it's, in some sense, our calculations are that it's 27% less popular than 7. That, you may recall that, Mary Lou, that came up last week. That was one of the ones that was in
41 came up?
41.
Did it?
41 came up, and it was an unpopular one.
So why does that better your chances if it's totally random?
Well, the way it betters your chances is that if you actually win, then you'll win quite a bit more. Instead of winning the number of people you'll have to share with will be a lot less.
Of course, because more than 2 people could be winners. There could be dozens.
Bottom line of the whole thing is, out of the 13-odd million combinations, we're only able to determine 210 that really are good ones.
A look at some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We know that this delay will temporarily slow our delivery into the next phase of at-risk people, particularly into other parts of our hospital system.
Dr. Bonnie Henry says the delay is a setback and will temporarily slow the province's delivery of the COVID-19 vaccine to at-risk people. But she stresses the province is working to ensure the highest number of people are immunized. Henry says she'll provide more first doses of the vaccine in March than originally planned, with second doses pushed to later that month. Meantime, BC is recording 1,330 new cases of COVID-19 and 31 deaths over a 3-day period. 300 new cases between Sunday and today represents the lowest level of one-day growth since November 3rd, with active cases of the virus now at their lowest level since November 7th. Restrictions were first implemented for some health regions in BC on November 8th. 343 people are in hospital tonight, 68 of those in critical care.
So someone took it upon themselves to remove her memorial and dump it right there like it was garbage.
A Vancouver mother is looking for answers after her daughter's memorial was torn down unexpectedly. She says she maintained it over the years as a way to commemorate her murdered daughter and to keep a light on her unsolved case. Janice Nicole Bryant was killed in a targeted shooting in 2017. Her mother is now rebuilding years of work. Boeing's 737 MAX is set for flight again. It now has Transport Canada's approval following a 22-month grounding that followed a pair of deadly overseas crashes. But can you trust the MAX 8? The National's Ian Hannamansing went looking for answers.
There is a lot riding on this plane. If all goes according to plan, it will be the first Boeing 737 MAX 8 to carry passengers in Canada since the jets were grounded 22 months ago. And if you want a sense of how important this is to the airline, consider this. The person at the controls will be WestJet's Vice President of Flight Operations, veteran 737 pilot Scott Wilson.
I was fortunate enough to be the operating captain on the first passenger flight in Canada with the MAX in October 2017, and I'm doubly proud to be able to take it out on a passenger flight on the 21st.
The MAX, a more fuel-efficient, longer-range Boeing 737, debuted 3 years ago, and Canadian air carriers were among the first in line. WestJet has 13 of them. And this is one of the 24 MAX 8s that Air Canada is prepping to get back in the sky. As their fleets were kept in storage in the dry heat of Arizona, both airlines have been working around the clock to get them ready. It's a process they call depreservation.
Great job, guys. Thanks so much.
Richard Steer is in charge of operations and maintenance for Air Canada.
Each of the return to service tasks take approximately 600 man hours. And, so we have the right people with the right skill sets and the time allotted to do it. We wouldn't bring it back if we didn't feel the aircraft was safe. So, yes, it is the absolute right time, and the airplane is ready to go.
But safety and trust were shattered after 2 MAX 8 crashes within 5 months. 346 people, including 18 Canadians, were killed. Airline disasters are almost always due to a series of causes. But what happened in Indonesia and Ethiopia appeared to have at least one thing in common. Pilots were struggling for control of their plane, likely not aware a sensor sent bad information to a computer program which kept pushing the nose down. Software, called MCAS, had been designed to keep the MAX 8 from climbing too steeply, but in a very rare set of circumstances. Adding to the problem, Boeing originally kept MCAS a secret from regulators and everyone else. Just this month, facing criminal charges, the manufacturer agreed to pay $2.5 billion, admitting it deceived the U.S. regulator, the FAA, about the MCAS system. Like WestJet, Air Canada wanted us to see what was happening behind the scenes for the return of the MAX. They gave us this rare access to one of their simulators.
Air Canada 500, checking in with you in the climb through 2,100, climbing 10 laps up.
Originally, Boeing said MAX pilots wouldn't need to go back into the simulator to refresh their training. But a year ago, they changed their guidance.
Reject. Speed rate.
Air Canada 500, understand you're rejecting on the runway. Emergency equipment is en route.
Remain seated, remain seated.
And remember that faulty data that triggered the MCAS software and contributed to the crashes? It was from something called the angle of attack sensor. Now, pilots are training how to see that and deal with it.
And one of the new redundancies that we have is with an angle of attack difference, the speed trim system will be disengaged, which would also disengage the MCAS as well.
As part of its new rules, Transport Canada is requiring simulator training, which they say requires what the FAA has mandated in the U.S. Now, every Canadian pilot will spend hours getting familiar once again with the jet and especially learning what's changed in the last 22 months. And so the key question, is the MAX 8 now safe?
I have every confidence now the system has been fixed. The causes of those 2 accidents could not occur today based on what they've done with the software. And I need to point out, at Air Canada, we've never had a problem with the MAX. We went back and reviewed every single minute of flight, and we looked at the flight control system, and we never had any indication at all there was an issue with the flight control system.
Scott Wilson went down to Miami last month for his simulator training. He points out among the key changes in the cockpit will be making it clearer to pilots when MCAS is activated and making it easier for them to take over. Or, in terms perhaps only an aviation expert will fully appreciate,
it's impossible for the speed trim system with MCAS now to move the stabilizer to a position that the pilots don't have ultimate and absolute control.
MAX 8 passenger flights resumed in the U.S. last month after the FAA recertified the jet. But some Canadians remain concerned about what appeared to be a cozy relationship between the U.S. regulator and the manufacturer the first time around. Transport Canada says it's conducted its own extensive review with test flights, software checks, and consultation with Canadian pilots. The agency says passengers should feel confident.
I can say that Transport Canada has undertaken a process from the beginning of this grounding. We outlined exactly the safety concerns that we had on this aircraft to the FAA and Boeing, and through the last 22 months made sure that all of those safety concerns have been addressed.
For an outside assessment, we went to Larry Vance. He investigated the Swissair crash off the coast of Nova Scotia, among others, when he was with the Transportation Safety Board. He now works as an independent consultant. There are people who say, particularly families of the people who died in those crashes, who say, look, you know, we had reason not to trust Boeing before, we have reason not to trust them now. What do you say to them?
They launched, because of that, probably the most sophisticated recertification of any aircraft that's ever happened in the world. So yes, you can hold them accountable and you can blame them for what happened before, but that's before. And now we have a brand new certification process that I am convinced is absolutely spot on, and it makes it one of the safer airplanes to fly on.
Would you fly on it?
Oh, absolutely I would, yes. I would put myself on it. I would take my family and have no hesitation in doing so.
The first Canadian passengers in almost 2 years will be boarding a flight later this week. And their pilot says he pulled rank to get the assignment.
I'm looking forward to it. It's been a long 22 months, a valuable 22 months. This aircraft behind me flew an operational readiness flight this morning, which is our preparedness to go up. We test every system on board, and it passed with flying colors.
Ian Hannamansing, CBC News, Vancouver.
6:44, a live look up Cambie Street, Vancouver City Hall there. Beautiful blue sky day across the south coast, but we are looking at some very wintry weather later this week. Johanna will explain all of that coming up.
Blue Monday is seen today as kind of statistically the most depressing day of the year. But for prairie women about a century ago who lived on farms, on homesteads, or in small towns, it was every Monday that they had a hard task to do, and it was known as Blue Monday Washing Day. So basically, Monday was set aside on most farms and small towns to do the washing in rural Saskatchewan about 100 years ago. And this was a really hard task for women at the time because there was no electricity, so there were no washing machines like we have today. Women had to use a bar of lye soap and a scrub board. But what would happen is that the yellow in the lye soap would make all the sheets and all of their garments, which were white, yellow. So they would have to use bluing powder, which the blue in the powder would counteract the yellow in the lye soap, and it would help to make garments nice and white. So that's why Monday Wash Day was known as Blue Monday, because of the bluing powder that they used to keep their clothes nice and white. It was very hard on their hands. They would spend hours scrubbing with the board and the lye soap. Their hands would crack open and bleed, and a lot of the time they would get infected. And they wouldn't have time to heal before the next Blue Monday rolled around and it was wash day again. So this was something that was a chronic source of kind of irritation and pain for Saskatchewan women a century ago. In this exhibit right here, we have some examples of the bluing powder from that period, artifacts that women would have used. So it just kind of shows how the different supplies that you use for laundry have changed so much in 100 years. Most people my age today have never heard of bluing powder. They don't know what it's used for. We kind of think of Tide or something that you go to the grocery store and buy to do your laundry, but the process of doing laundry has changed a lot in 100 years.
There, let's sing a sea shanty together. Yes. I'll sing you a song, it's a song of the sea. Row me bully boys row. I'll sing you a song if you'll sing it with me. And it's row me bully boys row. And it's row me bully boys, we're in a hurry boys, we got a long way to go. And we'll sing and we'll dance and bid farewell to France, and it's row me bully boys row.
It's me first time on TikTok, but I'll sing along. Row me bully boys row. Thanks to Sam and ye all here for singing me song, and it's row me bully boys row. And it's row me bully boys, we're in a hurry boys, we got a long way to go. And we'll sing and we'll dance and bid farewell to France, and it's row me bully boys row. Cheers from Newfoundland.
The Market Report is brought to you by Fortis BC. We've got even bigger rebates.
Rebate.
Whoa! On select high-efficiency equipment for business, but only for a limited time.
Johanna Wagstaffe back with us now. I certainly didn't need them today, but I do have my shovel and my salt on standby.
I think that is a great call, Mike. Yeah, throw in windshield scraper,
All of
and
the above,
you
yeah.
and you've got yourself prepared for this weekend. I'm not saying anything about how many centimeters or exactly how the timing will work out, but yes, I think it is on everyone's radar, so to speak. A couple different weather patterns to get to before the big weekend cool down and possible snow event. Let me take you through the big picture, starting with high pressure. That was our story today. That's shifting eastward, but it takes a while for those clouds to fill in. As I mentioned earlier, mainly sunny start to your Tuesday. It's Tuesday afternoon. We'll see the clouds roll in, few showers late afternoon, but that system really breaks up. Some good snow, though, for the higher elevations of our mountain passes. And then we get sort of a cloudy but dry Wednesday and Thursday. A nice one for most of the province tomorrow, the exception, of course, once again, Haida Gwaii and central and northern coastal sections just getting hammered. It'll be interesting to add up the rainfall totals as we head into the end of the month. I'm guessing we're going to get close to double average rainfall for this time of the year. Elsewhere, it has been dry and it has been warm for valley bottoms anyway. 2 at Williams Lake and -1 in through Cranbrook. High pressure holding for a couple more days for the interior. Okay, breaking down our long range forecast before your eyes dart to Saturday. Just looking for a slight chance of Tuesday late afternoon showers. And then as we head into Wednesday and Thursday, mainly dry. Temperatures coming down slightly, still above our seasonal, though, at least for the last 30-year average. At this point, maybe a chance of a shower on Thursday, but again, mainly dry. Okay, Thursday night into Friday, that's when we'll start to notice those temperatures drop. And it's Friday that we'll really get into that Arctic air mass. So we'll start to feel it towards the end of the week. Friday's looking like a nice day, though, but overnight Friday into Saturday, that temperature I'll be watching closely. Some of the models actually showing us more like a -5 for Friday overnight into Saturday. And with that cold air in place, you know the drill here on the South Coast. All we need is an injection of moisture, and it does look like there is a system coming for Saturday. So that timing will be key. If we get most of that moisture early Saturday morning, this is going to be a big snow event for Metro Vancouver. If it ends up coming more towards the afternoon, we could be talking a bit of a slush. And of course, if this storm track changes patterns even by 30, 50 kilometers, then we'll just get the edge of it. So I will definitely keep you posted for the weekend. Either way, Mike, this is the first Arctic blast, not just for us, but for all of BC. I'm seeing -20 temperatures for the interior, first time this season. So it's going to be a rude awakening for many of us, I think.
That's for sure. All right, Joe, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Well, the Vancouver Canucks starting goalie is donning a new mask. We'll tell you about the collaboration between the netminder and a Coast Salish artist. Stay with us.
Calgary Transit must mind a huge gap in ridership and changing demands from passengers. The service saw approximately 52 million riders by the end of 2020, which is the lowest it's been since the late 80s and early 90s. Acting Transit Director Russell Davies says with an empty downtown, a quiet Saddle Dome, and lack of in-person learning, fewer are traveling.
If that ridership doesn't return, we need to do some serious rethinking about what our transit model looks like, because as I say, we're designed to deliver service into the downtown. If that's not needed any longer, we need to reevaluate what we do and how we do it.
Davies says duplicate routes like express buses have been suspended until further notice, transit hours moved around to fit new needs. Maddie Semiatiki with the University of Toronto School of Cities says bus routes are more popular among those still using transit for shopping, errands, and appointments during the pandemic.
You're seeing the implementation of dedicated bus lanes or priority bus lanes in suburban areas to enable transit to operate more smoothly and to raise capacity while not having as high loads on the transit system.
Davies expects transit ridership will likely hold at 60% of pre-pandemic levels for the remainder of the year. Helen Pike, CBC News, Calgary.
By the time we come to April, this manure pit will have
a lot different look and smell. We're putting up a new dairy barn, and part of that is manure storage. So we built this manure pit in October, and what we're skating on is just the water that has accumulated in there since October. We're not one to waste an opportunity, and we noticed that there was water in the bottom, and it started freezing, and we thought, hey, that looks like a good skating rink. And lo and behold, we tested it out, and it was great for skating. This is sort of a once-in-a-lifetime experience. They won't be here next year skating on it, so we thought we would strike while the iron is hot, so to speak, or skate while the ice is cold, I guess. Whatever God gave us for an ice surface is what's here. I'd have to say it's probably number one in the number two business, if you catch my whiff. There's only about 8 inches of water. The scariest part was probably coming down. We just made sure we tied our ladder tight and put our spikes down on our ladder to get down. You notice there's a fence around. The manure pit's really actually a dangerous place to be when there's manure around. So the kids know that, and next year we definitely won't be down here.
I thought I didn't know how to skate, but then when I got down here, I was actually very good at it. It's kind of like a prison from down here. The echo is really amazing.
Probably in April is when we might have our first manure start to come in here, so the ice will be a different color by that point in time. Well, you know, skating is, well, you know what rhymes with pit.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. CBC is proud to sponsor the 27th annual online Victoria Film Festival, Vancouver Island's largest and longest running film fest. Get your tickets today at victoriafilmfestival.com. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
Well, as we commemorate Martin Luther King Jr. Day, we're also making another important anniversary known.
Exactly. 63 years ago, Willie O'Ree broke the NHL's color barrier as the first black man to play in the league. But as Jamie Strachan explains tonight, many say its diversity issues persist to this day.
On this Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the NHL honored the legacy of its first black player. Helmet decals and tribute videos for Willie O'Ree, who broke that barrier 63 years ago today.
He obviously had a great impact for players like myself and was a pioneer in the league.
Racism. But critics say diversity on the ice and in the executive suite needs more than symbols.
Well, I think that a lot of their efforts seem performative.
Shireen Ahmed says the NHL's diversity goals need a sharper focus.
They really need to start reassessing where they are now instead of frantically reaching out to people to say we need help with this and this and this, because they don't have a strategy and they don't have a plan.
Last fall, the Hockey Diversity Alliance, made up of current and former players, cut ties with the league when it wouldn't commit to hard targets around minority hiring and employment.
We just feel like not enough was getting done. I think just talking in circles is just a waste of everyone's time.
Criticism comes from beyond the pro ranks.
We would like to see tangible evidence that the National Hockey League is truly working to make hockey for everyone.
Clubs like the Black Girl Hockey Club work to introduce more black children to hockey. Its founder says change starts at the top.
They need to hire folks that are from those communities to speak to the needs of those communities. And until that happens on all levels, then there's going to be a disconnect.
Hess is spearheading the Get Uncomfortable campaign, an attempt to disrupt the game's status quo.
These folks feel really, they get very defensive when you start talking about the negative culture of hockey. And so trying to escape that, get around that defensiveness and really have people experience that empathy for others.
Hess says only then can hockey truly embrace diversity. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
A goalie for the Canucks dealt with criticism of his own after he wore a mask sporting a Thunderbird painted in the Coast Salish style.
It was designed by an artist in Sweden, and critics labeled it cultural appropriation. But now the situation has taken a turn toward reconciliation. Luke Marston saw the controversy as a teachable moment. The artist from the Stuminas Nation reached out to Braden Holtby, offering to paint him a mask with real Coast Salish art free of charge. It's inspired by the Coast Salish legend of the sea wolf on the hunt. He says he's proud to bring his culture to NHL ice.
The mask is expected to make its on-ice debut next week. Marston hopes it will be a good luck charm for the team, and it is beautiful.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
Holtby's not playing in the game tonight. It's Thatcher Demko, so he'll probably
good to
wear it. They play Wednesday here against Montreal, so maybe we'll see it. Maybe we will see it there.
I'm glad you have those stats. I did not.
Just have them right here handy, just for these reasons.
That's great. Yeah, I'll be looking forward to that.
That's all the time we have tonight. Thanks for watching. You can always find our newscasts online, cbc.ca/BC. Dan Burritt here at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Have a great night.
Good night.